Let's look at the glass half full a little bit. Which cancers are shrinking, the death rate shrinking fastest? Where's the good news right now?
Well, I think the good news, well, let me just give a couple of examples because it's extremely important. When our organization got started at the beginning of the last century, any serious diagnosis of cancer was a virtual death sentence, only to be preceded by a protracted period of pain and suffering. That's a heavy statement to make, but it's a true statement. And now, virtually everybody survives their diagnosis and treatment. Most survive long term, and many survive for a normal human lifespan time. So we have an opportunity, to get results that we dreamt and prayed for before, but we now have every reason to believe that we'll get that if we do the right things. And I'm sorry I digressed a little bit from your question.
No, but like breast cancer, if it's caught stage 1 is like 95%
exactly.
survival.
And Nancy Brinker, Ambassador Brinker's here, and she can talk about that. And we don't yet know how to prevent it. Hopefully we will before too long. But here too, we've had more than a decade of decline in breast cancer mortality rates. The Canadians said mammography doesn't work. That's because they didn't also pass laws after mammography was determined a good way to detect breast cancer and the best until we find something better. We passed legislation to make sure that if you got a mammogram in California or Indiana or New York, they were all high quality. And so clearly early detection of breast cancer has reduced breast cancer mortality rate. I started to say early on, remember cervical cancer was a leading cause of cancer death in women in the 1930s. And it's virtually 100% preventable and curable. A few women die every year because of lack of access. We haven't made any significant progress in the treatment of lung cancer, colon cancer. 60% of all colon cancer can be prevented or caught very early and with long-term survival. Prostate cancer, if the current trend continues on prostate cancer, it will be eliminated as a cause of cancer death in men in probably the next 15 years.
At what point should we say that most cancers are a chronic disease? There are no cures. I mean, I think there are 2 cures, Gleevec for kind of leukemia and the vaccine for cervical cancer. But other than that, there are basically no cures. At what point can we say we can manage this disease as a chronic condition?
But I think it's both. Let me just add to what you said. There are few drugs that are curative most of the time. But when we discovered in 1991 that the cancer death rates were going down, Philip Cole, who's a cancer epidemiologist trained at Harvard, called me on the phone and he said, I was wrong. All my life I've said we haven't made any progress except in prevention. But clearly the downturn in cancer mortality was a combination of prevention and improved therapy leading to long-term survival and indeed cures. So there are surgical cures. And there are people with combination chemotherapy, no one of those drugs may be curative together. People are living at least long enough that for all intents. But we will
live long enough to die of something else.
Yeah.
That's the goal, right?
Yeah, right, that's right. They say die young, late in life is possible, or something like that. But it is quickly becoming a manageable chronic disease. Well, we've got almost 11 million cancer survivors in America. On our organization, there were none. So it's the hopeful side of cancer has never been more hopeful. Secondly, and this is an important point that's often missed on people, cancer is potentially the most preventable and the most curable of the major life-threatening diseases facing Americans. I'm going to repeat that. It is potentially the most preventable and the most curable of the major life-threatening diseases. So we don't know how to cure heart disease. We know how to treat it often better than we know how to treat cancer, getting those results. But you don't cure the underlying coronary atherosclerosis, as an example. There are a lot of people walking around that once had cancer that could have killed them, that will never kill them. And I call that a cure. But we have to do the right things. So we have a moral imperative, in my opinion, on the war on cancer because we now have the data and evidence that we didn't have in 1971 that if we do these right things, we're going to get big-time results, and that's what people want.
But there's no, to use a familiar analogy from the Kennedy assassination world, there's no single bullet theory of cancer. We used to think that you could actually cure the whole disease, and we no longer believe that, right?
I think that the consensus opinion in the scientific community would be that that's biologically naive. That it's multiple diseases, there's certain common denominators we obviously know, but it's very, very complex. I think what we'll see is many cures. on the way to when we virtually prevent it. I believe, and it's perhaps a bias of my training, that we'll ultimately prevent virtually all cancers. It will be able to determine who is at risk for what cancers and when, and how to intervene and stop that from happening. That's just one avenue of research, but it's a very, very fruitful one, and one that I think, if you look at the history of public health and medicine in the world, you're hard-pressed to come up with very many major diseases like cancer that were ever brought under control by any means other than prevention.